I was on my way to the maintenance station with Nicole's car. She'd asked me the night before if I could drop it off in the morning. The engine check light had been flickering on and off, and she was concerned it might be something serious. Nothing out of the ordinary, really just one of those routine things. But Nicole hadn't mentioned the issue before, and I wasn't sure when it had even started. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she'd just forgotten to bring it up. I took a last look over the car's interior before heading to the station, noticing a couple of items scattered around. Some receipts, an empty water bottle, a scarf, and her gym bag tossed carelessly across the passenger seat. Nicole and I had been together for almost 10 years, so these details stood out to me. They were part of her habits, quirks that I had long grown accustomed to. While checking the glove compartment for the car's registration papers, I came across a small, brightly colored bottle tucked away in the back. It was almost hidden beneath an old set of napkins, wedged in, as if she had intended to keep it out of sight. My first thought was that it might be some lotion or hand sanitizer, but when I pulled it out, I saw the label. A bottle of edible lube, strawberry flavored. I stared at it for a long moment, my mind cycling through questions I hadn't even thought to ask before. Nicole and I never used anything like this. It wasn't part of our routine, if you could call it that. We had a pretty straightforward relationship, familiar and comfortable, but definitely not the kind of arrangement that involved this. I sat there, gripping the bottle as the reality of what I was holding settled in. A tightness crept into my chest as I turned the bottle over in my hand, examining it as if I'd missed something. A sticker that read, "Just a joke," or "For gym use only." But there was nothing like that. Just a neon label with playful fonts promising an exciting experience. I could still feel the sting of it, that nagging doubt creeping in, burrowing itself deeper. Nicole was always a little more private than me. She kept a separate circle of friends, mostly co-workers from her office downtown at a design agency. Our lives often crisscrossed, but there was plenty of space between them too, a gap I hadn't questioned until now. It was a new kind of silence, hanging heavily as I glanced back into the glove compartment. There was nothing else suspicious inside, just a few stray hair ties and an old, nearly expired bottle of ibuprofen. As I started the car, I replayed the past few months, fishing for memories, any sign that things hadn't been as perfect as they seemed. She'd been working late recently, staying at the office for client deadlines, or so she'd said. She also had a new gym membership, going a few times a week after work, or hitting up early morning sessions on the weekends. But there was something off about it. She wasn't the fitness type. Our weekends used to be ours, a few lazy mornings and grocery runs. Now, every so often, she would disappear in a pair of leggings and a gym bag. It hit me then. I'd never seen that gym bag before, not until today. It looked brand new, barely worn, but I'd brushed it off, thinking she'd just treated herself to some fresh gear. Now that excuse felt thin. I drove in a daze, following the familiar route to the maintenance station, the bottle tucked under the passenger seat where I'd shoved it. 100 scenarios played out in my mind, each one adding to the uncomfortable weight in my gut. Finally, I arrived at the shop and handed off Nicole's car. The mechanic gave me the usual rundown, assuring me it wouldn't be long. While I waited, I stepped outside and took out my phone. I could text her, confront her right now. But what would I even say? "Hey, I found some lube in your car. Care to explain?" No. I'd wait, gather some evidence, think this through. My stomach turned with an unfamiliar dread. The mechanic eventually called me back in, giving a brief explanation of the car's issue. It was a minor fault in the engine wiring, nothing that couldn't be fixed in a couple of hours. I thanked him, more out of habit than anything, then found myself stepping into the waiting area, distracted, wondering if I should go through with my plan. Nicole's office was only a few blocks away. I'd been there a few times for lunch or to pick her up when her car was in for service. It wouldn't be strange for me to swing by just to say hi. The idea seemed so simple, almost innocent, a casual visit to see my wife. But deep down, I knew I was looking for something else. 15 minutes later, I was stepping into the sleek, glass-fronted building that housed Nicole's agency, feeling out of place in my jeans and jacket among the rows of polished office workers. I caught a glimpse of myself in the lobby mirror, trying to calm the unsettled look on my face. What would I even say if I ran into her? I hadn't planned for that part yet. "Can I help you?" A receptionist looked up from her desk, polite but curious. "Oh, hi. I'm just here to see Nicole." "Nicole Reese?" I tried to sound casual, just a guy dropping in on his wife. But as I spoke, I realized how little I actually knew about her work life. We'd been married long enough that it felt like I should know more, yet I couldn't remember her exact title or department. She was in design, yes, but where? The receptionist nodded, typing quickly into her computer, then glanced up with a slight frown. I'm sorry, but she's actually out of the office today. I believe she took the day off. My stomach dropped. Out? I thought she was here. She had mentioned coming in. The receptionist's face softened, maybe sensing my confusion. I believe she mentioned something about a conference or a client meeting, but I'm not exactly sure. She gave a polite smile. I can leave a note if you'd like. No, that's all right. I forced a smile back, trying to mask the creeping unease. Thanks. I walked out of the building, each step heavier than the last. She taken the day off? No conference, no meeting? Where was she? The questions raced through my head faster than I could process them. Back in my car, I stared at my phone, feeling a swell of disbelief morph into something darker. Nicole hadn't mentioned any time off, and if she'd taken the day off work, why ask me to bring her car in for maintenance? It didn't add up. My thumb hovered over her contact, tempted to call her right there. But something stopped me, a voice in the back of my mind reminding me to stay calm, to gather information before jumping to conclusions. I pulled up my messages with Nicole, scrolling back to the last few days. The conversations were mundane, filled with reminders about picking up groceries and plans for a movie night. There was nothing suspicious, nothing out of place. But that felt like the problem. It was too normal, too routine, as if she were intentionally keeping me at arm's length. I decided to drive by our house on a whim, hoping against reason that maybe she'd just taken a mental health day and gone home to relax. But as I turned onto our street, my heart sank. Her car wasn't there. I parked a little way down, looking at the empty driveway, my mind already running with more troubling ideas. Something in me snapped, a quiet determination taking over. If she was hiding something, I was going to find out. I dialed a number I rarely used. It was Derek, an old friend of mine who ran a small security business. He and I had played ball together in high school, and we kept in touch, though not often. Derek was good with technology and surveillance. Discreet, thorough, no questions asked. Derek? It's me, I said, keeping my tone light. Well, to what do I owe the honor? His laugh crackled through the speaker. What's up, man? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. Listen, Derek, I need a bit of help. It's a personal thing. I could feel my cheeks flush, even though he couldn't see me. Can you meet up? I want to discuss something in person. There was a pause on the line, then a slow, understanding sigh. Yeah, I get it. Meet me at the corner cafe in half an hour. The corner cafe was close enough that I arrived early, but I sat in my car, nervously glancing at the bottle of edible lube still stashed under the passenger seat. Half of me wanted to toss it out the window, but I needed to keep it as evidence, a quiet reminder of the unanswered questions. A few minutes later, Derek's familiar tall, broad figure appeared in the doorway, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. He slid into the booth opposite, setting his coffee down and giving me that assessing look only an old friend could. So, what's going on? He asked, leaning forward. You said it was personal. I nodded, steeling myself. It's Nicole. I think she might be, well, I don't know, Derek. I found something, and now she's gone without telling me anything. I paused, the words feeling foreign, like I was reciting someone else's story. I think she might be cheating on me. Derek let out a low whistle, leaning back. All right, what do you need me to do? I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the gnawing discomfort of having to share something so personal with Derek. But he was the only one I could trust to handle this discreetly. I couldn't let my suspicions turn into wild accusations without evidence. Can you track her phone? I asked quietly, glancing around the cafe, even though no one was close enough to overhear. Derek's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he didn't look surprised. It's doable. You'd need access to her phone for about 5 minutes, though. Couldn't do it remotely without setting off some notifications on her end. Anything else? I hesitated, thinking about the possibility of her hiding something in our own home. Maybe she was using her laptop to communicate with someone, keeping everything under wraps. What about our home computer? Could you monitor activity from that? In case she's been chatting with someone? Derek nodded slowly. I could set up something simple on her laptop, a keystroke recorder. It wouldn't do much harm, and she'd never know it was there. But like I said, I'd need a few minutes with it. He took a long sip of his coffee, then leaned forward again. But before we go full spy mode, let me ask you this. Are you sure you want to know everything? I mean, once you see what she's up to, there's no going back. Things might never be the same. I considered his words, the weight of them pressing down on me. What if there was an innocent explanation, something I hadn't considered? But then my mind flashed back to that bottle in her car, the lies about work, the gym bag that had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It was like I'd been handed pieces of a puzzle, and the picture they were forming was impossible to ignore. Yes, I said firmly. I need to know, Derek. Whatever the truth is. He nodded, pulling out a small notebook. All right, I'll need a day or two to set things up, and you'll have to give me access to her laptop. Does she keep it with her? I thought about it. Nicole often left her laptop in her home office. It wouldn't be hard to get my hands on it when she wasn't around. Yeah, she usually leaves it at home. I can get it for you tonight. I replied, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Derek smiled, though it was a little grim. Good. I'll drop by your place later, and we'll set everything up. Try to keep things normal with her, so she doesn't get suspicious. We shook hands before parting ways, but the gravity of what I was doing hung in the air. This was it, the point of no return. By the end of the week, I'd know the truth, whatever it was. That evening, I arrived home before Nicole, a rare occurrence since she was usually back first. I could feel the tension in my shoulders as I stepped inside, my eyes instinctively moving toward her office, where her laptop would likely be waiting. I set down my things, trying to appear as casual as possible. A glance at the clock told me I had maybe 20 minutes before she'd be home. I made my way to her office, my heart pounding as I opened the door and spotted her sleek, silver laptop on the desk. I'd seen it hundreds of times before, but now it felt like something foreign, like it held secrets I wasn't meant to know. I picked it up, running my fingers over the smooth surface. Opening it, I found it locked with a password, as expected. I couldn't try to guess it without risking a lockout. But it didn't matter. Derek wouldn't need me to unlock it, just have it ready when he arrived. I heard the faint sound of a car pulling up in the driveway, and my stomach flipped. Nicole was home. Closing the laptop, I hurried back to the living room, grabbing a newspaper to look busy. I barely had time to settle myself on the couch before I heard her key in the lock. She stepped inside, her face flushed, and a whiff of some light, floral perfume that I didn't recognize drifted in with her. She was holding a small shopping bag from some high-end store, something I knew was well out of her usual budget. She caught my eye and smiled, a little too brightly. "Hey, babe, you're home early," she said, her voice cheerful as she set her bag on the table. "How was your day?" I put down the newspaper, forcing a smile. "Nothing special, just the usual," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "How was work?" Her smile faltered just slightly, but then she recovered. "Oh, it was fine, busy, you know how it is." She tucked a stray hair behind her ear, a nervous habit I'd noticed before. I decided to test the waters, hoping I could read her reaction. "I actually stopped by your office today," I said, keeping my gaze steady. "Wanted to surprise you, maybe take you to lunch." She froze just for a split second, but it was enough. Her eyes widened before she masked it with a quick laugh. "Oh, really? That's so sweet of you. I actually took the day off for some errands. Just some personal stuff." "Yeah, that's what they told me," I said, keeping my expression neutral. "You could have just said so. I could have joined you for the day." Nicole looked away, her fingers fumbling with the strap of her handbag. "I didn't want to bother you with boring stuff," she said lightly, but there was a faint edge in her voice, as if she were testing my reaction too. We stood there, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us, until she broke it with a quick change of subject. "Anyway, dinner?" she asked, moving past me into the kitchen. "I was thinking of making something special tonight." "Yes, sounds good," I replied, watching her closely as she busied herself in the kitchen. Later that evening, as Nicole was finishing up with dinner preparations, Derek arrived. I had arranged for him to stop by under the guise of helping me with some work issue. Nicole barely noticed him, too preoccupied with her own tasks, and he quietly followed me into her office. With practiced ease, Derek sat down at her desk, connected a small USB device to the laptop, and tapped a few keys. I watched him closely, feeling a surge of anticipation and dread as he worked. "All right, this'll capture everything. Emails, chats, browser history, all of it," he whispered, pulling the USB out. "And as long as she doesn't wipe her device, we'll have a record." I nodded, heart pounding. In a matter of days, I'd know if my suspicions were true or if I'd been misreading everything. Derek clapped a hand on my shoulder, his expression serious. Good luck, man. I'll keep you posted. After he left, I returned to the kitchen where Nicole was setting the table, humming softly. I felt like a stranger in my own home, standing there watching her, pretending nothing had changed. But inside, I knew everything was about to unravel. The following days passed in a surreal blur. Every moment with Nicole felt scripted, as if we were both reciting lines, each of us hiding something behind smiles and routine. I went about my day-to-day, but in the background, Derek's updates trickled in, a steady drip of tension and unease that kept me on edge. 3 days after setting up the surveillance, Derek texted me. Derek, got something. Call when you're alone. I excused myself from Nicole, saying I needed to make a work call, and stepped outside to the garage. The cool, stale air felt heavy as I dialed Derek's number. All right, what did you find? I asked, my voice low, bracing myself for whatever was coming. Derek's tone was steady, clinical. She's been messaging someone, a guy named Elliot, if that's even his real name. They're using a private messaging app. I've only seen parts of the messages, but it's explicit. He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. They've been meeting up at least twice a week, usually when she's at the gym or working late. I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of nausea rise. Part of me had been hoping this was all in my head, some paranoid misunderstanding. But here it was laid out in black and white. What else? Where are they meeting? I managed to ask, swallowing down the bile in my throat. Different spots around town, but mostly at a motel just off the interstate, Derek replied. I tracked the location data from her phone, and it lines up. She's been careful, only messaging him at specific times, probably when she thinks you're not around. They plan to meet again on Saturday morning. Saturday, I repeated, the weight of it settling in. That was our anniversary. Derek let out a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. Listen, man, you don't have to see this through if you don't want to. But if you need proof, you know exactly when and where to get it. We hung up, and I stayed in the garage for a while, trying to process the wave of emotions crashing over me. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. The thought of confronting her now felt too raw, too real, so I decided to wait until Saturday. It felt like there was nothing left to lose by seeing this through to the end. The rest of the week was torture. Nicole carried on as if everything was normal, even suggesting a special dinner to celebrate our anniversary. I forced myself to smile, nodding along as if I hadn't just learned she'd planned to spend that morning with another man. Finally, Saturday arrived. I told Nicole I'd be heading out early to meet some clients, but really, I was setting myself up to follow her. At 10 a.m., she pulled out of the driveway in her car, dressed casually, her gym bag in the passenger seat, just like any other Saturday morning. I followed at a distance, my hands gripping the wheel tightly as she turned onto the interstate. Sure enough, she exited just before the motel Derek had mentioned. My heart pounded as she parked in the lot, glancing around as though she were checking for any familiar faces before stepping out. A minute later, a silver sedan pulled up next to her. A man stepped out tall, maybe in his early 40s, dressed in a casual hoodie and jeans. They exchanged a brief look before he placed a hand on her shoulder, guiding her toward the motel entrance with an ease that spoke of familiarity. The rage building up inside me was nearly uncontrollable, and for a moment I considered confronting them right there. But I needed to stay calm, to be methodical. I took out my phone and snapped a series of photos, my hands shaking. Each one felt like a nail in the coffin of our marriage. I sat there in my car, heart pounding, as Nicole disappeared with this stranger into the motel. Every instinct in me screamed to charge in and demand answers, but something held me back. Maybe the need for finality, to have undeniable proof. I needed to see this through, as painful as it was. After what felt like an eternity, about an hour later, they emerged. Nicole was laughing, her hand on the man's arm, looking more carefree than I'd seen her in months. It was like she was living in a different reality, one where I didn't exist. She had no idea that I was watching her every move, that each smile she shared with him was like another twist of the knife. They said their goodbyes, a quick kiss on the cheek, before she slipped back into her car. I let her pull out first, staying a safe distance behind as she drove away. She didn't go straight home. Instead, She made a detour to a nearby coffee shop, probably to pick up coffee as her alibi. I thought bitterly. When she finally returned home, I parked down the street, waiting to give myself time to cool down. I could see her through the window, moving about the kitchen as if nothing had happened, her expression relaxed, content even. It was like watching a stranger in my own home. I waited until I felt I could keep my voice steady, then headed inside. The smell of fresh coffee hit me as I walked in, and Nicole turned, greeting me with a bright smile. "Hey babe, you're back early," she said, handing me a coffee cup. "Thought I'd surprise you with your favorite, caramel latte." I stared at her, struggling to keep my expression neutral. The ease, the warmth in her tone, it was infuriating. I took the cup, forcing a smile. "Thanks." She leaned against the counter, studying me. "So, are we still on for that anniversary dinner tonight?" I felt a surge of anger, but managed to keep my tone steady. "Yeah, should be nice." I watched her as she began to talk about her morning workout, casually mentioning the gym, throwing in details about some new yoga routine she'd supposedly tried. I listened to her weave lie after lie, each one building upon the last, while inside, something hardened in me. She was good at this, too good. She'd likely been lying for a lot longer than I'd realized. When she finally trailed off, I cleared my throat, keeping my expression unreadable. "By the way, Nicole, how's Elliot doing?" The color drained from her face instantly. She stammered, clearly caught off guard. What?" "Oh, Elliot." I repeated, my voice calm, almost too calm. "The guy you've been meeting at that motel." She froze, her eyes widening as the reality hit her. She knew she was caught. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out, and she took a step back, glancing around as if searching for an escape. I set the coffee cup down, leaning against the counter. "How long has this been going on, Nicole?" "Weeks? Months?" Her eyes filled with panic, but she quickly tried to regain control, her voice trembling. It's not what you think. Elliot is just a friend." "A friend?" I repeated, my voice laced with sarcasm. "So that's what friends do now? They meet in motels on weekends and spend hours together." She opened her mouth to respond, but I could see the gears turning, her mind racing to come up with some excuse, some explanation that could undo the damage. But I'd seen enough. "Save it, Nicole," I said, the anger finally breaking through. "I followed you. I saw you with him. I have proof." Her face crumpled, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, clearly shaken. "Please let me explain. I didn't mean for this to happen. I don't know how we got here." I shook my head, feeling a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "No, Nicole, you got here because you made a choice to betray me, to lie to my face over and over. And now, I don't even know who you are anymore." She reached out as if to touch me, her hand trembling. "Please, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." I stepped back, putting distance between us. "It's too late for that. You've been hurting me for months. You just didn't care enough to stop." The weight of the betrayal settled between us, thick and suffocating. She stood there, tears streaming down her face, but I felt no sympathy, no desire to comfort her. She had made her choice, and now so would I. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving Nicole in a stunned silence, her apologies and pleas trailing off as I shut the door behind me. I needed air, space, anything to keep me from doing something I'd regret in the heat of the moment. I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, the pain of her betrayal morphing into something darker, colder, a resolve to make her feel every ounce of humiliation and betrayal that I was feeling. By the time I returned home, my plan was already taking shape. If she wanted to destroy the life we'd built together, I'd make sure she paid for it, piece by piece. First, I needed to lay the groundwork. I called Derek, asking for a favor, one that would require discretion. He listened quietly, and when I finished, he gave a low whistle. "Man, you're going all out with this. You have no idea," I replied, steel in my voice. "Can you help me or not?" Derek agreed without hesitation, and within the next day, he'd equip my phone with a tracking app. Every text, call, and email she made from now on would be relayed to me in real time. I'd know everything, her every move, every word she whispered to Elliot, and I wouldn't stop there. The next morning, while Nicole was at work, I dug out the spare key to her office. She usually left it in the drawer by the front door, wrapped in a paper napkin from a cafe we used to visit. I slipped into her office, Taking my time, I scanned through her laptop, downloaded her work files onto a flash drive, and noted any contacts she'd been especially close with. Every friend, coworker, or acquaintance who'd so much as spoken to her in the past few months was now part of my network of possible informants. As I scrolled through her laptop, I stumbled across an email exchange between her and Elliot. It was nauseatingly cheerful, like they were planning an innocent weekend getaway instead of tearing my life apart. The emails detailed their rendezvous points, their plans to meet during work trips, and even the pathetic code names they'd use for one another. I memorized every word, every detail, letting it fuel my resolve. But I wasn't done. The real heart of my plan was financial. Nicole had always trusted me with the finances. She'd never bothered to learn much beyond the basics, leaving it to me to manage our accounts. I decided to exploit that weakness. Over the next few days, I began slowly draining our joint accounts, transferring money into a private account she couldn't access or track. I even made a few quiet investments in high-risk stocks, knowing that the paper trail would leave her legally liable if anything went south. But the real masterpiece was the fake affair. If she could humiliate me with her secret life, then I'd make her wonder if she was the only one. I reached out to an old college friend, Mia, who had always been a bit of a wild card. She was more than willing to play along with my plan, helping me craft the appearance of an affair that would hit Nicole where it hurt. Mia and I staged a series of text messages, complete with suggestive photos, that I left accidentally open on my phone one evening. It didn't take long for Nicole to notice. She'd been acting cautious, careful not to provoke me since the confrontation. But that night, I watched her eyes land on my phone, narrowing as she saw a message pop up from Mia with a photo attached. Her face paled as she tried to act casual, but the jealousy was unmistakable. I knew then that the seeds of doubt were planted. I went to bed that night feeling the satisfying weight of control shifting back to me. The next morning, I could feel the shift in the air. Nicole's usual cheerfulness was subdued, her smile forced, her glances furtive. She hadn't mentioned the messages she'd seen from Mia, but I could tell she was simmering with suspicion, wondering if her betrayal had somehow driven me into someone else's arms. Let her wonder, I thought. Let her feel that same unease. I kept up the act, making sure to leave my phone unattended when I was around her, casually glancing at it like I was checking for a message from Mia, knowing it would eat away at Nicole. Over the next week, I began texting Mia more often, even going so far as to mention my lunch plans with her in front of Nicole. I could see the tension building, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. And the best part? She didn't dare confront me about it. She knew she had no right. But that was only part of the plan. I was determined to hit her where it really hurt. On Friday, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney, a tough, no-nonsense woman named Paula Mason, known in our town for her brutal approach in court. She took one look at the evidence I'd collected, photos, messages, bank records, and nodded approvingly. "Given everything you've gathered, I think we have a strong case for infidelity," she said, flipping through the stack of printed emails between Nicole and Elliot. "And if you're serious about taking this all the way, we can push for a very favorable settlement on your end." I nodded. I want it all, Paula. The house, full custody of the kids. And I want her to walk away with nothing. Paula's lips curled into a faint smile. "I like your style. Let's get started." Over the next few days, I went through the motions of preparing for what would soon be the end of our marriage. I changed the passwords on all our accounts, blocked her access to the credit cards, and discreetly packed up the few valuables I didn't want her to touch once she found out. Everything she thought we owned together would soon be out of her reach. And while I set up the groundwork for her financial ruin, Mia and I took our fake affair a step further. We staged a few public outings, taking photos together at a few of Nicole's favorite spots around town. We even posted a few of the shots online, tagging mutual friends, making sure word would reach Nicole. I wanted her to see that I had moved on, even before she had a chance to come clean about her own betrayal. A few days later, Nicole finally broke. I came home to find her waiting for me in the living room, her face a mixture of anger and desperation. She was sitting on the edge of the couch, her hands twisted together as she looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed from what I assumed was a recent round of tears. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely holding steady. I smirked inwardly, but kept my expression neutral. "About what?" Her eyes narrowed slightly, anger flickering in them. "You know exactly what. I saw the messages on your phone. The pictures of you and Mia. Are you cheating on me? The irony of her question was too perfect, and it took everything in me not to laugh. Cheating? Really, Nicole? I asked, crossing my arms. You're going to accuse me of that? She looked taken aback, as if she hadn't expected me to turn it around on her. I need to know what's going on. You've been acting so distant lately, and now I see these photos. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. After everything we've been through, how could you? My anger flared, the sheer hypocrisy of her accusation fueling it. Oh, don't you dare play the victim with me, I said, my voice hardening. You think I don't know about Elliot? The motel, the secret messages, the whole affair you've been carrying on behind my back? I've known for months, Nicole. So spare me the act. Her face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to find a response. You can't play. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Explain? I laughed bitterly. What could you possibly explain, Nicole? That you didn't mean for me to find out? That you thought you could lie to me for the rest of our lives? She sank back into the couch, defeated, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't even know why I did it. I just felt alone. Alone? I repeated, shaking my head. Don't you dare turn this around on me. I gave you everything. I was here every single day trying to make this work, while you were out with him, sneaking around like none of it mattered. She sobbed, her hands covering her face. But I felt no sympathy, only satisfaction as I watched her fall apart. She had taken everything from me, but now it was my turn. Consider this your notice, Nicole, I said coldly, stepping back. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from her soon. Nicole's head snapped up, a look of horror crossing her face. A lawyer? You're divorcing me? I met her gaze, unflinching. Yes, and believe me, by the time this is over, you'll know exactly what it feels like to lose everything. Without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving her sobbing in the empty silence of the life she'd destroyed. I left the house with her cries echoing faintly behind me, like the distant sound of something breaking. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the weight of what had just happened settle over me. It was satisfying, but in a hollow, final way, like shutting the door on something I'd never return to. I thought about our years together, the memories that now felt tainted by her betrayal. Everything had changed, and there was no going back. I called Derek, filling him in on the confrontation. He listened in silence, letting me vent. So, what now? He finally asked. Now we finish it, I replied. She'll get the papers in a few days. I want to make sure everything is airtight, that she doesn't get a cent more than she deserves. Derek let out a low chuckle. I've got a contact who could help. Guy's a financial investigator. He can make sure nothing slips through the cracks. That's exactly what I need, I said, nodding. Let's make sure she feels this. The following days were a whirlwind of meetings with Paula, tightening the case, going over every document, every shred of evidence, every detail that would paint Nicole's betrayal in stark relief. Paula was relentless, combing through everything with a ruthless efficiency that I appreciated more than I could express. By the time we filed, the case was a work of art, a precision-built machine that would leave Nicole with little to fight over. I'd pushed for full custody of the kids, which, given her infidelity and my solid evidence, was looking highly likely. The house, the savings, every major asset was secured, all under my control. Nicole had tried calling a few times, sending pleading messages asking to talk things out, but I ignored each one, watching with a sense of grim satisfaction as her desperation grew. She finally stopped, and a silence fell that was almost eerie, like the calm before a storm. Then came the day of the hearing. I stood outside the courthouse, my lawyer by my side, waiting as Nicole approached. She looked haggard, her usual confidence stripped away. She barely met my eyes as she walked past, her own lawyer trailing behind her. Inside, the proceedings moved quickly. Paula presented the evidence with the calm authority of someone who knew she'd already won. The judge didn't seem to miss a detail, his eyes narrowing as he reviewed the stack of evidence we'd compiled. When it was Nicole's turn to speak, she stammered, trying to defend her actions, but it was futile. The facts were clear, and her arguments fell apart under Paula's cross-examination. Finally, the judge rendered his decision. The house, custody, the bulk of our savings all awarded to me. Nicole would receive a fraction, barely enough to cover her own legal fees. As we exited the courtroom, she caught up to me in the hallway, her face pale, her eyes brimming with tears. She looked at me, a desperate hope in her gaze. "Please, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Is there any way we can work something out? I know I made a mistake, but we were together for so long. Doesn't that mean anything?" I met her gaze, feeling nothing but the cold satisfaction of knowing that she'd finally faced the consequences of her choices. "You made your bed, Nicole," I said quietly. "Now you get to lie in it." She broke down then, her shoulders shaking as she tried to hold back sobs, but I turned away, walking out of the courthouse and into the fresh air, feeling the weight of her betrayal finally lift. It was over. Completely, irrevocably over. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. New cheating wife stories tomorrow.